Let's talk about the competition. The competition continues for these next six teams that we're going to chat a little bit about over the weekend. Let's start with Orlando Pride versus Kansas City Current, or Orlando Pride sitting at number 8, Kansas City Current sitting at number 12. Let's talk a little bit about these two teams, Lisa, because again, we've talked about Kansas City before and during the offseason and even during their Challenge Cup run that we've been a little bit impressed with some of their play and some of their individual performances that they've been putting out there. But they're starting off their regular season now with 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
And despite some of the interesting things that we're seeing in between the lines for this team, they've yet to pick up a result in this regular season, where we're looking at this Orlando Pride team going on the road and getting a win against Angel City. So when we're looking at these two teams, Orlando Pride getting to host in this one, who are you picking and why?
I am so intrigued by these two sides because, as you mentioned, Kansas City, they're struggling right now, which I did not foresee watching them throughout the Challenge Cup and watching them go to the semifinals and be just this disruptive team that had so many things going for them. They hit a bit of a speed bump getting these back-to-back losses. I mean, Portland was a bit of a shock factor for them, losing 3-0 and then going up against Houston, which was a team that they had beaten twice throughout the Challenge Cup and then ultimately getting handed that loss. Now they are going to play a team like Orlando Pride, who had very minimum expectations throughout the Challenge Cup, but ultimately has been on the up and up, just beating Angel City. They've gotten Sydney LaRue back. They've gotten Aaron McLeod back in goal. With having those two players back and the combination and the familiarity building between Orlando's front line with Darian Jenkins and Jan's daughter and Sydney LaRue, Orlando's on this bit of a swing right now where this season we're going to I'm predicting a lot of ups and downs, like a little bit of a hilly slope for this Orlando Pride team, where they're going to go on a run and win a few games, rack up a few points, and then the wheels might get loose a little bit before they can tighten them back up again. And we're seeing that stretch right now for Kansas City, where they haven't done as well as they want. They've had a week to regroup, a week to prepare themselves for an Orlando Pride team that, right, is coming off of a really big win. And now Kansas City has to travel to Orlando. This match, honestly, I see a draw between these two sides.
Okay.
I do, because I think they're very evenly matched. They haven't seen each other yet because
Right.
Central versus East region. But throughout their play and the styles of play between these two sides, pretty similar, I'm going to say, because Orlando, they're going to look to go fast and furious, get long balls over the top, get Kansas City's backline facing their own goal, running towards their own goal. And then you have Sydney LaRue, Darian Jenkins hunting down the ball, whipping crosses in, being just dangerous threats in the attack in a variety of ways once they get the ball in the attacking end. And for Kansas City, a lot of the pressure rests on, besides Kristen Hamilton and Haley Mace, a lot of the rookies for this team. Kansas City, 4 or 5 rookies coming into this team, and that get time, might even see 4 of them start. Orlando Pride, 4 or 5 rookies coming into this team. A few of them get the starts. So it's going to be a young battle between these two. Ultimately, I see it as a draw, splitting points between Orlando and Kansas City. What do you have, and what really are you looking at between these two sides that haven't faced each other yet?
I think for Orlando, I want to see a little bit more continuity from what they were presenting during that match against Angel City. They got this ridiculous goal from somebody like Sydney LaRue, who can turn something out of nothing, right? And this was an early like second minute, third minute type of goal. And then there just wasn't anything else after that in terms of finding the finishing in the back of the net. I would like to see a little bit more build from that on the Orlando Pride side of thing. And for Kansas City Current, a little bit similar. They've been coming out of some of these matches, particularly their most recent game, not the 3-0 loss against Portland. That was a struggle. Let's just call a duck when it quacks that it's a duck. That was a tough game for them. They were not active in the final third. They had a tough day. But they were coming out and putting up shots, getting some attempts on target during their previous match. in week 2, and unfortunately we're unable to come away with the result either. So I'm hoping that we're going to see something similar for Kansas City as well. I would like to see continuity for both of these teams, which is why I don't blame you for picking a draw, because we might see these two teams still try to continue to build off of what they've been doing in these early weeks in the regular season. I just think a game like this could come down to a strong individual performance, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's going to be somebody like a LaRue, if she's still available for Orlando Pride, or somebody like a Kristen Hamilton for Kansas City Current, because I think a little bit will depend. You talked about the rookies. Is somebody like Elise Bennett available for the Current going up against Orlando Pride? Was listed as questionable in that previous match, and she's someone who has helped kind of stretch these back lines and create these attacks for the Current. And I think it might come down to maybe some 1v1 battles here with Hamilton and LaRue.
You mentioned Elise Bennett. She was questionable for the match, Kansas City against Houston. Yep. Right before that, changed to out. Yep. And I was on the call for that game, and we saw Elise Bennett in street clothes on the bench. So she didn't warm up. She wasn't even dressed for that match. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to say. It's tough to be here and be like, oh, like a rookie who has seen a handful of games with this team is a huge loss. But that is how impactful this player was for the Current in light of losing somebody like a Lynn Williams to the season. So it's maybe it's a little funny or a little early to say like, oh, like how could you consider this type of player already a loss? But based on her production and how she was opening things up there, yeah, I would absolutely consider that a loss. So I think in this one, in terms of my pick, I want to say a draw, but I think it's going to come down to individual performance. And I just want to tip that a little bit to Orlando. I think Sydney LaRue is going to maybe build on things. And I'm going to go narrow. I'm going to say maybe it's going to be another 1-0, but I'm going to go Orlando in this one.
I see where you're coming from with that. And against Angel City, Sydney LaRue, she played 90. I think Leah Pruitt also did play 90 minutes in that match. And their high press was really impressive. And against Kansas City, if Pruitt, LaRue, Jenkins can continue that high press, look to turn the ball over early, we've seen Kansas City make mistakes trying to build out of the back, right? They've got Weinbrenner in the back, Luera in the midfield, all these rookies that are still learning the pace of play. And when you have Sydney LaRue hunting you down and Leah Pruitt and Jenkins that aren't giving you an inch of space, I see that. I see like a quick turnover, like transitional goal for Orlando. So you have Orlando. I'm going to stick with my draw between these two.
I have a feeling you're going to be a little bit more correct on this one than I am, but every once in a while I like to try to be brave. So let's go with that. We've got 2 more matches to talk about as the competition continues. We're getting into teams now that have familiarity with each other. Let's talk about Gotham FC versus North Carolina Courage. Lisa, I'm just going to kick it off. When I'm looking at these two teams in the regular season, they're sitting number 7, number 11 right now. But again, we're talking about a Courage team that just came off of a Challenge Cup victory, hoisting the cup up and winning their 7th title for the franchise. When I'm looking at these two, knowing that they have some head-to-heads in Challenge Cup group stage, I'm going with North Carolina Courage on this one. I'm going to make it quick and easy. Who are you going with in this one?
I love the quick decision. You're not thinking about it too much. You're just going to go with it. And honestly, I love that. You mentioned these two teams. They did play each other. The first time in the Challenge Cup, North Carolina wins 2-0. Second time, it's a draw, 1-1 between Gotham and North Carolina. For Gotham, it was Ife Onumonu who ended up getting that lone goal for Gotham, which Gotham, a team that did not have a lot of offensive production throughout the Challenge Cup, even throughout their first couple of regular season games, just struggling on that side of the ball. And a team like North Carolina Courage, who is without Caroline heading into this match. We know she's dealing with a bit of an injury after the Challenge Cup final. Kiki Pickett just underwent some knee surgery, and she'll be out. She's put on the 45-day list for injury report. They're hurting right now. And as the Challenge Cup went on, North Carolina, they were gunning for that Challenge Cup. They wanted the win. We just had an incredible interview with Carson Pickett, defender for the Courage, about how she wanted to win. They didn't want to lose. They wanted to keep playing despite having to miss a regular season game and having to play back-to-back games, 3 games in 9 days. They wanted to play and they wanted to win. Now that it's the regular season, it's almost a bit of a reset for North Carolina, as they are out missing certain players with injury, but they get to face a really familiar Gotham side that they saw throughout the Challenge Cup. And Gotham, they're coming off that tough loss to San Diego, 4-0. That's really bad. Honestly, that's really bad for Gotham. Between these two sides, I think North Carolina is going to win and just dominate over Gotham. I'm actually hopeful that Gotham gets a goal, gets 1, 2 on the board. I mean, when you look at their personnel between Christy Mewis, Margaret Purse, Paige Monahan even has been playing really well. Ifeoma Anamano in their front line and Caprice Didasco, who attacks down the flanks. They have a lot of the makings to get goals. And just depending on how North Carolina can defend against that with the players that they have and the smart skills they have, we'll see about that. But North Carolina is going to control the midfield, even without Caroline. With Zabinia in there and Denise O'Sullivan, who went on a run throughout the Challenge Cup, the midfield battle is going to be won by North Carolina, which ultimately will lead to the Courage winning this match.
I think, looking at the middle third is important. But I mean, even if we're looking out wide on the flanks, we're talking about Pickett and Matthias potentially going up against a Didasco and possibly an Imani Dorsey. What are we going to see in those battles? Are they going to kind of cancel each other out? What's going to happen? If that does come to play out, where there's a little bit of isolation or a little bit of kind of, canceling out of the other things on the flanks, and play has to be forced through the middle, I'm giving that advantage to players like Davinia and Denise O'Sullivan for the Courage. So I just think in this one, there is going to be a result. It's going to be a win and or a loss. And I think you and I are both going with Courage. So we'll see how that plays out. Final one for this one, Racing Louisville FC versus Houston Dash. Again, another pair of teams who have some familiarity with each other already, being in the Central Region group during the Challenge Cup. Racing Louisville sitting at number 9 in the regular season standings right now, and Houston Dash sitting at number 5. When we're looking at these two, Lisa, I got to say, I think this is the one that I'm looking at and saying that this is going to be a draw for me in this one. I just think that there's too much familiarity here. I just think that these are two teams who are going to be eager to try to make sure that they post the results. So I'm hopeful that it's going to be a good game. And I'm hopeful that we might even get some goals in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if it maybe does turn into a little bit of end-to-end with a little bit of a shootout. But I think if there's the whole mentality and concept of, well, you scored, now I'm going to score kind of energy. And I think we could be in for a fun one. But I think it might settle out into a draw. Who are you looking at in this one and why?
You mentioned a shootout. These two teams, they played twice in the Challenge Cup. First time, Houston wins 3-2. Second time, Houston gets the second win 2-1. So look at those goals. 5 in the first game, 3 in the second match. Both teams scoring. Yeah, you're not wrong if history continues to prove itself, because these sides, they like to play a bit open, and that's maybe for a lack of structure that they have in the middle of their field. That neither team has such a dominating midfield. For Houston, they've dropped forward Rachel Daly back into the midfield, into that attacking 10 role, and she controls so much more of the game from there. But she often is dropping so far back for Houston to pick up the ball in the defensive end to then kickstart the attack, that she almost needs to be playing the ball to herself. So like a long diagonal ball, and then Daly receives it from the pass from Daly. Of course, that can't happen, but because of that, Houston's midfield is really, really open, and they do look to go quick, finding a Bam up top and Michelle Prince, whether it's Shea Groom, maybe getting her start in the front line as well for Houston. And for Racing Louisville, they play really open as well. I mean, they do when they look to find their forwards. It's just because there's not enough stability in the midfield. So you have a draw between these two sides. I'm not going to go with the draw just for the sake of switching it up, even though I initially had a draw dubbed for this one. Okay. Houston got the double win against Racing Louisville in the Challenge Cup. Houston's also coming off of a 2-0 win against Kansas City last week. Racing Louisville, they're coming off a 2-2 draw to OL Reign. They played against the big guns in OL Reign and Laura Harvey's side in Seattle at Lumen Field. I give the upper hand to Racing Louisville right now. They know what it takes to compete. They know what it takes to be gritty against a team that is so organized, and ultimately getting an own goal in that match. But hey, a goal is a goal. I think Jess McDonald can prove some dangerous things against Houston. We saw a lot from Lauren Millay and Cece Kaiser. Katie Lund has been tremendous in goal for Racing Louisville, I believe. So I'm going to give the nod to the purple side here, Racing Louisville.
All right. I respect it.